All right, awesome. Well, hello everyone. Very nice to meet you all. My name is Ahmed Mirza. I am an Anderson grad from 2019. Now I am a VC. I've had a few startups along the way. I'll get more into my background in just a bit, but how's everyone else doing here tonight? I'd love to know just a little bit about you, who you are, your background before I kind of dive in. So I'll just cherry pick here. And I don't see any name tags, so here in the corner.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, I'm a first year Anderson full-time MBA. 8 years of experience in enterprise sales, software, big companies, really fast-growing companies. Yeah, working on something Web3, tech, and entertainment.
Cool. Well, welcome. Thank you. Let's go here, right here in the front.
My name is Easton. I'm a second year high student, and then I've been working as an engineering consultant for 5 years, and then recently I changed my role to work on the strategy to develop new offers. My company acquired a lot of small companies, so my job is kind of incorporate their offers with our offers, and then we have a big offer to the clients.
Cool. Well, welcome. Thank you. And in the corner.
So Andy Johnson, I'm at IMBA. So just started wrapping up the first quarter. Work for Sony Pictures. So I'm head of the source to pay IT platforms there. So Ariba, SAP, Basking Curve. And so I'm here just to learn something that I know.
Cool. Great. Welcome. So I'm going to dive into today storytelling, presentations, kind of everything in between. Basically, my goal is to help you all craft a very compelling and creative pitch deck. And everything you know about presentations, everything you know about pitch decks is wrong. And I'm going to tell you why you should listen to me and trust me in just a bit. So the goal of this session today, this is what your startup story sounds like right now. I'm starting a startup that helps other startups start. And what we want to do is that we want to learn the essence of pitch deck communication, what it takes to actually communicate a message that resonates with your audience. So we're going to take this and translate it into something like this. So this is my personal one. I coach founders to communicate vivid stories that move audiences to action. All right, so the audience that we're particularly interested in are investors. The action we want them to take is to be compelled by your startup, by your story, so that they invite you to another meeting, and they write you a check for your startup. That's our goal. So we'll get there. It's going to take some time, but follow me, and we'll get there. So I hope you'll indulge me. I want to make this as interactive as possible. I want to make this fun. I don't want to give just another quote unquote boomer type presentation. So I'll ask all of you to please stand up. We're going to do something called 1, 2, 3, 4. And it's really simple. We're going to move each limb 4 times. So I'll display first and then have you guys follow. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll do that 2 times through, right? And I'm a big believer of having the right energy, having the right focus. So that's the main reason for this, right? So ready on 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. One more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Cool. Feeling good?
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. So I'm big on quotes when they have purpose. This is a quote from Anish Kapoor, who's a renowned worldwide architect. All ideas grow out of other ideas. And the purpose of this is that when you're crafting your story, don't be shy to share it, right? You should be pitching your story, your startup's journey all the time, because the feedback you receive, the ideas you receive from other people are going to compel you to craft a better story for your startup. So feedback is imperative. Use it to your advantage, just as Anisha over here suggested. Another quote by James Clear here. There's two skills to modern business: storytelling and spreadsheets. Know the numbers, craft the narrative. That's all you have to do when you're starting your. When you're at the earliest stages, know the numbers, know your market size, know your go-to-market strategy, how you're going to reach out to customers. But you sure as hell better know how to tell that damn story. Because if you don't, no one's going to care. So storytelling. It's interesting. When you look at this word, all of storytelling, what we're accustomed to knowing is the who, what, where, when, how. Very rarely we know or ask why. It's literally right there. It's in the word itself. When you start looking at this, you get compelled to craft something that's bigger than what you're actually working on. So we're going to do a brief exercise. So all the startup projects that you're all working on, I want you to close your eyes, think about your startup. Let's say you got a feature on TechCrunch. I want you to tell me what are some of the thoughts that are going through your head. And just for reference, here is the front cover of TechCrunch. Not from today, though. This is a couple days old. And this is going to be your startup story. One of the journalists from TechCrunch is going to cover it. You're going to get front and center attention. What are some of the emotions that kind of go through your head? I'll call random. Yeah. Excitement. Excitement. Okay, great. Let's go. Yeah.
No good.
No, yeah, black sweatshirt. Yeah.
My initial reaction would be, oh shit.
Oh, shit. Okay. Well, why is that?
Because like I think you have to get to another level of prepared from like one-on-one messaging about what's great about your startup to like what would scale across anyone who's going to be reading TechCrunch.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a one-time opportunity to get it right at that scale.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very, very interesting. One-time opportunity. Why do you say that?
Because there are like so many startups that are trying to get that page real estate that if you like craft a message that you think is going to reach, that is going to resonate with people who are reading TechCrunch and then it doesn't land, like there's no reason for you to be shown in TechCrunch again.
So I'm going to repeat this back to you just so I understand. So it's not about the who, what, where, when, how. It's about the why.
Yeah.
Okay. Great. Green sweatshirt.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Great. One more in the hat.
I mean, my first thing I thought was excitement as well, but it's a good point. I'd probably be saying that shit too. Yeah, I hope I have the inventory or whatever it is to scale. Yeah.
That's what we're going to learn about. We're going to learn about why and how to get there. Now, let's go to another popular social networking platform, LinkedIn. This is your LinkedIn feed. This was mine from a couple of days ago. Let's say you're about to write a post. Your post is going to go here. What are you going to share with your network?
Accomplishments, some thoughts, like thought leadership ideas.
Mm-hmm.
That's usually what I post. Like if I see an article, then I'll like kind of give some of my thoughts about it. Or if there's something that I'm doing at work that I think is notable.
Any particular reason why?
Generally because a lot of people follow me are either in my industry or if they're trying to get to know me, I want them to kind of know what it is that I do. Because I also have a job title that most people don't know what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to demonstrate that through my posts and like sort of examples of what I'm working on.
Yeah, great. Fantastic. In the classes?
What would I consider? Because I'm working on with an amazing team. very excited about this virtual project.
Can you speak up a little bit?
Oh yeah. So something along the lines of I'm excited about the work I'm doing with my current team and can't wait to share the finished product at the very end.
And any particular reason why?
So why? Because we're very excited about whatever it is that we're developing. Still trying to develop it much.
Okay. Cool. And in the half over here.
I would say any major update can be success, it can be failure. Just any update that would be relevant to my network.
So that's a really important word that you just brought up. But what's your name?
Swandeep.
Okay, so Andy brought up relevance, right? So we all want to share things with our network and with people who we are affiliated with that are relevant, right? And relevance comes about when we dig one or two layers deeper than just surface level stuff that we're accustomed to consuming and typically writing about. So this is not working. I wish it did. It's a really cool exercise. You would go there and it shows a word cloud. Unfortunately, I've tried this all day. It's not working. So we'll skip this. Your job is to craft a compelling story, and that is based on relevance. It's on understanding your why, and it's understanding who you're communicating to, your target audience at all times. And that is what your pitch deck needs to do. So stories, the way we communicate, right, plus the actual communication medium we use, gets you to this notion of social currency. And my argument here is that everything that you post, you write, your pitch deck is in search of social currency. That's all that matters. It doesn't matter how pretty your design is. It doesn't matter how well structured your document is. If the story doesn't stick, if it does not land, if it is not communicated in a proper format or way, you're not going to get social currency, and you're not going to break that first psychological barrier with your audience. And everything's just going to land flat. It won't matter. So one thing you take away today is this. You need to get to social currency. Cool. How are we feeling? Good? Awesome. So I have 3 modules here. We'll go through each one of them. First one is mostly just about me, some frameworks on visual communications. Second one is more science. So I'll get a little professorial here, unfortunately. And then lastly, I'll actually get to some tactical tips to execute your story and your pitch deck. So everything you know, out the window, right? We're gonna follow this. Yes?
So I had a quick question about the whole LinkedIn process.
Yeah.
So I typically see a lot of great posts. Kind of causes me to kind of look introspectively I need to write the perfect post for me to even want to post it. So it's how do you mentally how do you get over that hump where it's I want to feel okay posting whatever I want to I'm almost judging myself.
Yeah. Common situation that exists today, not only among companies, but individuals themselves. I call this failure to launch, right? And if you don't launch with your best, it doesn't matter what foot is forward, right? You're going to do it to the best of your ability, right? But you shouldn't be measuring your post against other people, right? You need to measure your post against yourself. And if you don't post, you're not going to get feedback, right? You're not going to know your voice. You're not going to know the angle, the why. You're not going to know what's relevant. You're going to miss out on all of these points of feedback that are so essential to crafting your story. And by not posting, you lose out on them. So the only way to learn, the only way to get better, you're going to have to overcome that challenge, that initial challenge. It's hard, right? But eventually, you'll develop a very fine laser outlook into who your target audience is and what you need to communicate. I haven't included it here, but the CEO of Cotopaxi, which is a B Corp retailer of fitness and recreational equipment, I believe his name is Davis Smith. He does a phenomenal job on LinkedIn. He posts but he knows his audience, right? He's posting to people who are adventure seekers, but they also want to do good in the world, right? So he posts stuff, feel good, happy things that happen throughout the world, and that have some sort of fitness or recreational life. So, and he only did that because ages ago, he started off with one post, decided to figure out who his target market is, and then take it from there. So with time is my suggestion, and iterate from there. Yep.
And just to continue on the same question, I know that usually for
Can
brands.
you speak up, please?
Yeah, just to continue on the same question, I know for brands usually we do planning, right, for messaging. So what type of messaging we want to communicate as a brand, and usually we try to focus on three different messaging. Would you recommend the same thing doing for LinkedIn rather than just post about everything?
Yeah, I mean, that's sort of the world we live in, right? There's so much information, there's so much, access to just verbal vomit online, for the lack of a better term. You need to craft and figure out what you're going to stand for and who you want to be. And whether that's 2 or 3, I don't think that necessarily matters. I do get concerned when you get to 5, you're trying to be all things to all people. I don't think you can do that. Look, you're going to post some stuff, right? And people are not going to like it. And that's just the reality. People are going to come in your comments and they're going to be like, oh, well, this is dumb. Okay, I'm sorry that you felt that way. There's nothing I can do, right? This is how I see the world. This is what I'm trying to communicate. And to the people that it matters, they'll appreciate that. So, yeah, I agree. 2, 3, whatever that number is. Cool. So, yeah, 3 modules here. So, first module. Let's walk through this. So, about me. I love presentations. This is something that I built a craft in throughout my career. I'd say in my career, I've done about 2,200 presentations of all kinds. So I've created presentations that have facilitated mergers and acquisitions. They've been presented at the board level, at Deloitte, Google, and elsewhere. I've done presentations on memes and emojis and trying to understand how people communicate. I've done presentations for my kindergarten at home for parent-teacher day. So when you contextualize that, 2,200 presentations, if you just multiply that by about 20 slides, we're talking about over 40,000 slides. And I've done stuff in every format. I've done stuff in every which way. I've analyzed how to communicate things. This is a passion of mine, and I'm happy to share sort of my expertise today. So I'm a big believer that all of your stories, all of your presentations start with some sort of inspiration. And if you don't know or you're not clear on that inspiration, then I would encourage you to go seek that out and see what that is. So for me, I have 5 things here. Number 1, I live, eat, breathe, sleep startup stuff. This is just who I am. This is the world I live in. That's just what I do. I get a lot of inspiration from that. I want to share how, with entrepreneurs to be, how to go 0 to 1 as quickly as possible, as successfully as possible. I seek a lot of inspiration from relationships, right? So whether that's my family, my friends, my 5-year-old son now, I get a lot of energy from that. I put a lot of energy in. I seek a lot of inspiration from the environments I've been in. I'm a former New Yorker. I've been in LA now for over 6 years. Kind of hard to get over sunshine and palm trees. I take overwhelming, maybe not too healthy inspiration from building Legos. I build a new set every weekend. I actually use that as personal wellness time to get creative, build stuff. It doesn't have to be pretty or nice or anything. I'm just putting stuff together. And then my outlook. My inspiration is that I always view the world, problems, everything around me as the glass half full. I'm always looking upward. How can we go up and then beyond and over deliver on things? So when it comes to your inspiration, think about sort of, what elements would you want to craft?
Do you follow the instructions when you build your Legos?
Yeah, so, yes and no. These days I spend a lot of time building Legos with a 5-year-old who's really into following directions. And I'm telling them, we don't need to necessarily color in the lines, we can go outside, it's okay, but, we're getting there. So my path, a little bit about me. I started my career on Wall Street. I was an investment banker. I facilitated mergers and acquisitions for a number of years, transitioned to corporate development, then left that world because I always felt like I was the Excel and PowerPoint jockey and wanted to build actual stuff, products people used. So I launched a couple of entrepreneurial ventures. My first venture was incubated by a portion of the Techstars Accelerator. It failed miserably, just like any first-time venture goes for first-time entrepreneur. I launched another venture in the presentation software space, taking the knowledge and skills I had to make presentation making easier. We did okay, reasonably well, had large clients, large successes, couldn't raise follow-on funding. That led me to a career in venture studios. So I built robotic startups for Wavemaker Labs, a couple of SaaS companies for Share Ventures, and then I ended up at Pilot 44, a corporate innovation studio. Here I incubated 4 projects in the span of 1 year, going 0 to 1 multiple times, and building ventures for Kellogg's, P&G, an automotive company, and one other. And then currently, I have my own consulting outfit. I'm doing business development at Techstars. I run a meme account that has 500,000 followers. I won't reveal who I am, don't ask me. And starting this winter in January, I will be a faculty advisor to the entrepreneurship school here at UCLA. So, yeah, just a little bit about me. I've given this workshop everywhere. These are just some of the names that I've given it to, that it's been given to startup entrepreneurs, colleagues, investors, accelerator leaders, everything in between. So again, we're not going to do this, not working, but I would love to hear from you. What do you all find difficult about presentations? I'll give you a minute to think, and then I'll call randomly. Who haven't heard the olive jacket?
Sometimes fully identifying the audience, knowing who's listening and what they're aiming to learn.
Yeah, target audience. Absolutely right. Cool. Classes.
I think knowing where to start.
Yep.
You have a short amount of time to really capture somebody's attention, hook them. Sometimes that beginning stage is the hardest stage to figure out.
Yeah, kind of where do you land, and how do you decide that? Yeah, absolutely right.
How do I make them care? What do I need to say succinctly to make them care, make it land?
Yep. All good things. And by the way, no wrong answers.
Sometimes I find presentations working against me because whatever I'm presenting works against me in connecting with the audience.
Right.
They're reading the text versus hearing me speak.
Yeah, we'll get into that. Yeah, absolutely. In the jacket right there.
So for me, I find it more difficult when I deliver it. I think proposing what the audience needs is less difficult for me, but actual delivery is usually having some gap between what I imagine and what it actually turns out to be.
Yep. Yeah, all good things. Any others? Yep.
I actually have a really big fear of public speaking. So it took me a long time really forcing myself to get in front, but I still hear really nervous. And then, you know, again, also the like really connecting and being engaging rather than just reading your slides.
Totally right. Yes.
Like the slide deck creation process, like really nice.
Yep.
Presentation.
So
I would say creating the narrative. What do I actually, where are the impact points hit them? And how do I craft that story so that it really resonates? I think it's adding to other points here, but
it looks like I've heard about 5 different things if I were to categorize. So content, structure, story, design, audience. All right, so these are the 5 key elements. It's good that we covered them here. These are the 5 key elements to your pitch deck that we're going to go through. So unfortunately, yes, not working. We'll deal with it later. So frameworks. So as you're aware, right, we went through this framework before. Stories plus communication equals social currency. We are in search of social currency. Your pitch deck is no different. It is also in search of social currency. I'm going to show you how this works and how we get there. So there's this, and this is the professorial part. Apologies in advance. There is an author by the name of Jonah Berger. He is a professor at Wharton. And he wrote this book called Contagious, probably a decade ago. And he talks about why certain products, certain stories, certain elements take off while others don't. And he hypothesizes and says that basically it's based on this, what's known as the steps model, that carries these things to the foreground, to people's minds, to get them to really share and bring something of novelty to everyone else. So basically, what he says is, you start off with a story, something that's compelling, something that connects with your audience. And of course, this only happens after you canvas and understand who you're presenting. Once you do that, you communicate a story that's compelling. That story has to bring some sort of practical value that I can share publicly. There's some sort of emotional element that allows me to connect to that story, to that product. And then from there, there's a trigger, right? So there's some sort of ask, an action that requires me to do something. And when that happens, this notion of social currency evolves. So, example, there's a restaurant in New York City. They serve a $100 hamburger. There's no restaurant wait list. Can't call. Just have to show up.
Here's what I found.
Not now. You just have to show up. And the entrance is kind of weird. It's like a speakeasy, but the restaurant is in the back. There's only 20 seats. And they only do it, last I checked, Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. So you have to go there. You have to wait in line. If you get in, you get in, and you get the honor of paying $100 to try out this hamburger. But apparently it's the best damn burger. But see, what's interesting about that, the psychology about that, right? Think about it, right? The story is $100 burger. I've never had a $100 burger. Has anyone here had a $100 burger? No. Yeah. So the practical value here is that, okay, I'm going to share this with my friends. I'm going to share it with this cohort here. And they're going to be like, oh, wow, $100 burger. I'm going to research hamburger prices. And, well, what's so great about this? And that's going to get them to share publicly with other people. And when they do that, there's an emotion. Well, if you haven't tried it, I haven't tried it. Well, what are we missing out on? Right? There's a certain element of fear of missing out, FOMO, built in. And then when that happens, we're both compelled, since we don't know anyone that's tried this $100 burger, and no one seems to know what this $100 burger tastes like, we're both compelled to try it out. And when we try it out, we go, and let's say we wait in line, we're lucky enough to get in, and then we try out the burger, and we're like, yeah, this is actually the best. And it's not. It may be, it may not be. But in your mind, it automatically is because of that psychological hurdle, right? Because you're one of 20 people that got into this restaurant on a Thursday bustling night in New York City. No one else got in. You tried a $100 burger, you can Instagram, you can tweet it, whatever. You can't tweet the location, I think. But that's social currency. Now you have something of value. You can go to other people. You're like, oh, hey, I tried a $100 burger. Have you tried a $100 burger? Sorry. Have you tried a $100 burger? Oh, no.
Have you?
I have not. No, I haven't. Anything I do here is just part of the presentation, okay? So, but that's social currency. That's sort of the value that you're trying to generate, right? And it works marvelously when you understand the psychology behind it. And that restaurant crafts it perfectly. So now that we understand that, how do we actually tell stories? You know, so much about storytelling. You go out, everyone's talking about telling a story, having a story. This seems to be the buzzword post-COVID. Let's boil it down. So another individual, Michael Margolis, wrote this book called Story 10X. It's a decent read, but I think the biggest takeaway from this is this framework. This team analyzed basically 30,000 literary elements from the beginning of literary time. So Homer, the Iliad, kind of everything, the modern day presentations. And what he's boiled it down to is this three-pronged framework: context, emotions, evidence. And what he suggests is that in order to communicate with people, you need to give them some context, right? You need to give them some room and space to breathe and understand what you're about to communicate. So often, right? Just think about this. We're going into presentations and, you'll go, if you've ever been part of a startup demo day or startup presentation, they immediately jump into the problem. Our problem is we're solving Uber for cats. And this is the biggest problem. It's a $20 trillion TAM, and they spew all of this information at you, which, mind you, is most of the time meaningless. But there's no context. Why are we even doing this? Uber for cats? Why do we need that? Right? So context. Explain the world as you see it in the simplest way possible, but no simpler. Right? And the reason for that is that I want to do it as simply. Assume that your audience doesn't know the problem you're looking to solve or what you're going to talk about. That's a safe assumption. But then also, don't talk down to them. Right? Don't explain it as if you're talking to a toddler. Right? Talk to them. Talk with them. Right? You're having a conversation. You're not talking down at them. The second part of this framework, emotions. So, okay, we explained what we're doing as simple as possible. Now let's get into the emotional context. Why should I care? Right? This is a big part of presentations and visual communications. Why? Nobody does this. No, so many presentations, everyone over-indexes on evidence, right? Our TAM is $20 trillion. We have the best data science model. We're doing X, Y, Z. Not to pick on crypto and Web3, but we're crypto, Web3, decentralized, AL, ML, AI, crypto kitties, all of this stuff. It doesn't matter because there's no emotional layer. Why are we doing this? Take me on a journey, right? Take me on a journey so that I am emotionally connected to the problem or the subject that you're presenting. And then from there, give me all the evidence, right? Let's talk about the market. Let's talk about the competition. Let's talk about your go-to-market and who you're targeting. But none of that evidence matters if you don't have the setup of the context and the emotions to connect me to it. So at the beginning, I said stories plus communications equals social currency. If there's a second thing that you should take note, it's this framework. I would encourage you to use this in all of your communication. So let's go into psychology. All that you're trying to do in your presentation boils down to these 6 elements. These 6 icons, that's it. There's nothing more, nothing less. That's the hurdle that you have to get across. And the reason for that, and I know it may seem elementary, you have to understand the power dynamics that exist between you and your audience. So when you're presenting, such as I'm presenting here, there's an automatic power dynamic. right? I'm in a position of power. I'm presenting to all of you. I know what's coming. I know what I'm going to say. You may not necessarily know what's coming next, right? And this inherently gives the person that's presenting a power dynamic. And then this, what I call is this line of tension that exists between the two sides. Your job as a presenter is to diffuse that tension between you and the audience. And the way that happens, going back to those 6 icons, is that, say you have something valuable to say, you want your audience to pay attention. You only have a small window to do so. You want your audience to understand what you're saying in that short period of time. The only way you're going to do it is through concise, repeated messages that you deliver on a repeated basis, so it gets your audience to act upon your message. And when you do that, you automatically diffuse the tension that exists between you and the audience. This is the biggest issue in presentations and visual communications today. No one diffuses the tension. Everyone talks down to you. And this is what needs to take place. This is what gets you funded. So let's look at messaging. Deliver more than information, right? Information is cheap. Everyone has an iPhone, has a smartphone, right? Anyone can access information at any time. How do I deliver more? So information, presentation software market is $27 billion. Okay? I told you that. Whether you take that for a fact or some other reason, don't know. Does that tell us anything about, does that tell us anything? Aside from how large it is. No. No. Yeah, $27 billion. I don't know how to contextualize this. $27 billion large? Is it a small market? Is it growing? Is it not growing? I don't know. So messaging is just an ever slight change. It's such a small nuance. But basically what you're trying to communicate is the presentation software market is a huge and growing market opportunity at $27 billion. You are leading the audience to where you want to take them. Right? Assume that the audience doesn't know what's going on. They don't know your market. It is your job to educate them. It is the presentation's job, the pitch deck's job, to educate the audience on what is going on and to give them enough context in that moment to give them some understanding of how to frame this within their investment bias or whatever thesis they may have.
I have a very different way of looking at this. I was used to present it that way, and then I realized that my slide decks were becoming more of fluff words.
Yeah.
How do you stop doing that? Because huge market opportunity, it's another fluff word.
Yeah. So I agree. You shouldn't have buzzwords. You shouldn't have fluff. But you need to provide some context, right?
Yeah.
In order for the audience to understand. So it may be different if you're presenting to a bunch of executives who know your business, right? They know the market that you're presenting to. But if you're presenting to investors who may not necessarily know about Uber for cats, then it is your job to coach them and lead them to where you want to go, right? And there are ways to do this so that it's not, your messaging is direct, but it still gives them the context, right? It's not overly fluffy,
right?
And that just is going to happen with repetition and iteration. Yeah. So we won't do this today because I want to make sure we get through everything else. But basically, a worthwhile exercise that you should do at home for your startup is to come up with a one-sentence description of your company. And what's interesting is that this often is one of the hardest exercises because to do this without jargon or buzzwords is difficult. And we'll see later on what companies that are large that are struggling with this as well. So break. We're gonna try to run through if that's okay. Oh yeah.
Just a quick question on the last slide
Yeah.
exercise. What's your opinion in terms of describing it using analogies with other companies? Is that an appropriate way of doing it, or should you try to avoid doing it?
Yeah, there's different schools of thought on this.
Yeah.
So some schools of thought say, oh, that's an easy way to contextualize something. It gets people to think. Flip side of that is if you say Uber forgets, right, then you're almost handicapping yourself to Uber, right? So Uber has been immensely successful, but there are also tons of skeletons in Uber's closet, right? They haven't been profitable. They've burned a bunch of money, cash. They're having a tough time trying to grow their business, things of that sort. So it's a fine balance. I don't recommend doing analogies against other companies. I think you can do analogies with certain processes, certain environmental elements, but to benchmark yourself against a company, I think it's a tough sell. Yeah. Cool. So the answer here is Sunday, in case you were wondering, and yeah, that's a cool animation. Cool. So module 2, we'll go into science, the types of presentations, and then your pitch. So 3 rules to craft compelling presentations. You want to adapt to your audience. You want to maximize what's known as the signal to noise ratio. Get into that, it's a bit technical. And you want to do that on a repeated basis throughout your day. So adapting to your audience. You hear this, nobody knows what this is. So what it means is that you need to put yourself in your audience's shoes. Understand their constraints, their situations, their expectations, and then recognize how that affects them, right? So let's say if you're crafting a pitch deck for your startup, you're obviously going to be pitching to investors. What you need to do is to put yourself in their shoes. And that may be that, okay, well, this investor is probably going to meet 100 companies in a short period of time. For every 100 companies they meet, maybe they'll go, to the next diligence meeting or a follow-on meeting with 5 of them, 10 of them if you're lucky. So obviously their constraint is time. Their situation is that they need to meet a lot of companies, and the expectations are that they want something that is so compelling that they can't say no, right? They have to say yes. So that's what I mean by trying to adapt to your audience. And once you put yourself in their shoes, you understand that you're going to craft a story that is targeted, is exciting, and gets to the crux of the issue that you're looking to cover. 2, maximize the signal to noise ratio. Bit technical, but basically in your story and the visual communications, the pitch deck of your startup, you want to contrast what helps versus what hinders. So basically take away stuff that is either extra noise or just some fluff. Have stuff that actually helps and delivers your message. Remove any sort of friction. So anything that that's not adding any sort of elements to your story doesn't belong on the slide, right? So I think earlier, right, you said that there's sometimes an issue between what you're presenting and versus what's on the slide. You always want to make sure that when you're in that situation, what you're saying matches what's here. Because as you mentioned earlier, the audience can only do one thing. They can either listen to you or they can read. They can't do both. So make sure that that's straight away. And then increase empathy, right? You increase empathy by understanding what you're looking to communicate. You want to do this in the softest, easiest way possible. And you do that by using whether it's iconography, imagery, whatever that may be, all of that increases empathy. 3rd rule, use effective redundancy. So as you're crafting your messages, you're going to do this through text, you're going to do this through imagery, and you're going to do this through iconography. Now, I had shared this image here, and this is a slide that perfectly exemplifies effective redundancy, right? So there's 3 rules. Those 3 rules are denoted in the image, the hot air balloons. It's also denoted in the 3 words along the bottom what those rules are. And it's simple, it doesn't hinder anything, it's all there. I'm trying to communicate to you through images, through text, and through targeted messages. I'm doing that all in one slide in the simplest way possible. So when you boil something down, you can get a slide that looks like this in its simplest form. Okay, so through text, through imagery, through icon. So presentation types. So there are 6 types of presentations that exist, and you should know this just for your own personal education, but it'll help you as you craft documents and presentations. So the first kind are to provide information, right? So these are just overviews on a specific topic or subject. They're kind of data dumps. They're things that left behind for you to read and look at on your own time. So think of charts, data, things of that sort. Report progress. So if you're working on a team, this is basically, you think of a Gantt chart, think of milestones, status updates. That's another type of presentation. Third type, to sell a product or service. This is where the typical pitch deck fits in. It's to highlight the value proposition of your idea, of your product, what you're trying to communicate along with that. Fourth type of presentations are help make a decision. So basically they help narrow the focus, present a bunch of options, and then you say, okay, well, this is our recommendation. This is the way we should go. But here's all the data. Fifth type, solving a problem. So basically you have this large abstract situation, you distill the so what, present the data. So much more of like a research presentation. And then lastly, teaching a skill. So anything that teaches a new concept, any sort of new learning process. So much like this presentation would be there. So for you, we're going to focus on to sell a product or a service. So your pitch. So we're going to play some Jeopardy. I don't know if this is connected. Yeah. Okay, so we're gonna play Jeopardy. There is music here usually. I don't know where it is right now. But I would like you to read this prompt. I'll read it aloud as well, and then we'll try to answer it in terms of who you think this is. So, worldwide leader in technology that powers the internet. This company inspires new possibilities by reimagining your applications, securing your data, transforming your infrastructure, and empowering your teams for a global and inclusive future. Who are we talking about? I will give you some time to think. Yeah, you could chat with each other. Cool.
No, it's not right.
Ideas? Thoughts? Yeah.
We were thinking maybe Cisco.
Okay.
We were thinking Microsoft.
Microsoft, okay.
IBM.
IBM, okay. Yes. Any other takers? Google? Okay, yeah, good guess.
Every tech company.
Every tech company? Yeah. Heck yeah. So again, no word cloud. It's really interesting to see everyone's answers on the screen. But okay. So the answer to this is Cisco.
Wow.
Really? You are the first person to guess this correctly on the first try.
Really?
Really.
They
I've
call
given
themselves the plumbing of the internet.
Yeah, I've given this workshop probably over 30 times, and no one has guessed Cisco. But what's funny, what's interesting about that, right? So kudos, right? Great job, thank you. Maybe no, right? But what's so interesting about this, right? When you read this prompt and this description, If you were to insert AWS, this makes sense.
Yes.
If you insert Box, this makes sense. If you insert Microsoft, this makes sense. Google, this makes sense, right? VMware, right? It is endless, right? You can go through the entire tech stack and list every company, and this in some remote way would make sense. And what I'm trying to tell you here is that you can't be too generic. You can't be too specific. If you're too specific or using too many buzzwords, there's no contextual layer. It's not going to land with your audience. If it's too generic like this, then you're trying to be all things to all people. That effectively means you're nothing, right? And what I'm trying to showcase here is that if companies that are quite literally worth trillions of dollars are struggling with this, then your startup is going to struggle with this. It is a natural part of the process. And the only way you're going to find this balance between being too generic or too specific is by communicating that story, by communicating that description over and over, taking feedback from your audience and iterating on it over and over again. Cool exercise. Okay, so types of pitches. One sentence pitch. So this is, again, 10 to 15 words, gets to the core part of your value proposition, what it is that you solve for, what it is that you do. No buzzwords ever, no jargon, simple and to the point. 10 to 15 words. 3-sentence description. And these are types of pitches, descriptions, stories you should have for your startup at all time as you begin to craft your documents. 3 sentences. So here, in addition to the value prop, problem, solution, you get a little bit into the market, a little bit into the user who you're trying to solve for. 3 sentences max is about 30 seconds to a minute. 5 sentences. So this is a much more substantial description of your company. Here you're going to talk about, in addition to all the other things previously, but also the market, the competition, and possibly an ask. What are you looking for? Right, and this is probably about 2 minutes. And full pitch. So this is anywhere from, I've seen some formats doing 3 minutes, 5 minutes, 10 minutes in certain cases, but generally a lot of people now are over-indexing on 5 minutes. The only time you use a full pitch sort of scenario or presentation is when you have the authority to do so, when you have this power dynamic between you and the audience. It is a stadium-style presentation. You do not use a full pitch if you're going for a coffee chat with a VC. Then they'll automatically write you off. So, but you should have this at your disposal, and you only build up to this point. You don't work backwards, right? You build up to this point. Yes?
So should these pitches be eventually then morph into the company vision and mission?
Yeah, so you'll get into the vision, the mission, all of the numerical aspects, market size, competition, business model, things of that sort.
Can you reiterate what's the 3-sentence?
So 3 sentences, so you're doing problem solution and you're getting a little bit to the user. And perhaps the market size or market. I won't say market size, but just generally the market that you operate in. And that's about, it should be 30 seconds to a minute. No, not more than that. Just enough to get the investor, the audience to understand what you're working on. Okay. So no break, unfortunately. Cool animation there. The answer up there is an atlas. Okay. Module 3. We'll go into tactical tips and how to actually execute your story and your pitch deck. So what are these tactical tips? How do you actually do it? What I find so interesting is that, and you'll probably see this in your classes, and I'm sorry, Anderson, for ragging on other guest speakers. But people will come in and say like, yeah, you should do this for your pitch deck, and you should talk about X, Y, Z. And no one tells you why, right? So I faced the same thing during business school, and like I would hear this constantly. And okay, well, why do we do that? Like, why do we do it that specific way? So I actually researched the heck out of this. I spoke to the original founder of PowerPoint. I spoke to other visual communication specialists in the space to understand, well, why do we do it this way and what's the purpose? So these are the sort of some of the findings that I've come across since then. So first and foremost, when you're crafting your pitch deck or, let's say a presentation, I'm a big believer in just sketching it out, not using PowerPoint, Keynote, Google Slides. And the reason for that is that when you get trapped inside of that box, your creativity also gets trapped inside that box. And instead of focusing on the story, the structure, the flow, you start fiddling with shapes and text boxes and clip art and all this other stuff. Whereas if you took a simple canvas, a piece of paper, you sketched out the main elements of your story, that's what matters. So let's see how this works. So there are 3 elements that you should focus on in terms of your entire story arc of your presentation. At the top, you have your main message. This is what your presentation, your startup stands for. In the middle, you have main points that obviously are structured in a certain way to get the investor or the audience excited. And then the subpoints are the individual slides within your presentation, right? So when we go back to this framework here, context, emotions, evidence, right? And briefly summarizing this, context, right? We describe the world as we see it, as simple as possible, but no simpler. We go on an emotional roller coaster together, and the purpose of this is to bring action so that you and I are on the same page, you and I are experiencing that same journey together. And then once we do that, we provide the evidence, all the numbers, all the data, whatever we want to share that adds, benefits, doesn't hinder the story's progression. So when we layer on that framework into sort of our overall framework of the presentation, what we realize is we're really just solving for 3 things, right? So yes, we have the individual slides, but we really need to focus on the main points. And the reason for that is that the main points are the anchors for the entire presentation. You nail that, you nail the presentation, right? And once you start understanding your documents, your presentations through this lens, you're going to see an immediate difference in how you deliver them because it's a much simpler format. You're not worried about individual slides. You're worried about the story arc because the story arc is what's going to carry the presentation, whatever it is that you're talking about from start to finish. It's not the data. It's not the individual slides. You need to modulate for that middle layer. Second, flow, right? So there's pitch decks have a specific flow. And if you don't have this specific flow, investors, unfortunately, will automatically discard you. That's just the way it is. I wish there was a different way. I wish, you could have something that's more creative and compelling and different. But just given the amount of deal volume that comes through to venture capitalists, they don't have the time to understand a structure that's different than what they're already used to. And because they don't have the time, they're not going to take the time. They're not going to give you that benefit. They don't have to. Elitist, I agree. Yes, elitist, absolutely. But they don't have to, right? Because for every company, for every startup, there's 3, 4 other startups. So what is this flow? So let's go back to that framework of context. So within context, I actually recommend an additional slide that kind of leads into the presentation. Right? So this is outside of just your cover slide. This is an additional 1-sentence description sort of slide that gets to what it is that you're solving for, what it is that you're doing, maybe how you do it. Then let's talk about the problem and solution. Second layer, emotions. What is that emotional journey? Well, for pitch decks, It's the why now, right? Why is this so relevant? Why is Uber for cats so relevant now? Well, because there's a bunch of cats outside and they need Ubers, okay? Paint the vision, right? So in addition to telling me why now, also paint the vision for how big this business can be. Take me on that journey. Show me your passions, your dreams for this startup. Paint that picture. Become Bob Ross. Evidence. Give me all the data to support what it is that we just talked about. Okay, I'm with you. I think I understand the contextual layer. I think I understand the problem. I'm with you on the emotional journey. I'm there with you. Support it. Proof is in the pudding. Proof is in numbers. As James Clear says, know the numbers, craft the narrative. This is the time to know the numbers. You need to show numbers that make sense, that are not so far aspirational where you get laughed out of the room, right? So let's talk about the market. Let's talk about the competition. Let's talk about your go-to-market and business model, financials, team, traction. Give me all of that. And then when you do that, let's also layer in social currency, right? We've built up all of this emotion, sentiment over 12, 13 slides. Give me an ask. What is your ask? Are you raising money now? Do you want connections? Do you want relationships? Or what are you looking for? Have that ask at the end. So this is my recommended format. Does it have to be 12 slides? No. Generally what I've seen, 12 to 15 slides is where you need to be for an early stage startup, generally speaking. Are there some instances where you could go beyond that? Absolutely. There are some deep tech robotic startups that require more slides, and that's perfectly okay. You can have an appendix at the end and insert all of that technical knowledge in the appendix. But the main upfront story should be airtight, should be pretty easy to follow. One second. And the greatest hack for this, for your story, is that you take the title from each of your slides. You input it into a new Google Doc. So if you have 13 slides, you have 13 lines. And you should be able to track the entire story from start to finish without any hiccups. And if you can do that, that means your story is tracking. If you can't do that, then something's wrong in how you're communicating. The slides don't matter then, right? So you need to figure out what that is, what that structure is, and get that right. Yes?
Could you expand on why 4 and then 5 instead of 5 and then 4? Why did it say why now instead of and then vision and then instead of sort of painting the vision and then highlighting why now?
Yeah, so investors, you could go either way, right? It depends on your personal story, right? Investors typically over-index and want to know why this business, why this problem is an issue right now. What either changed in the technological environment, what changed in consumer sentiment, what changed in just the possibility, the probability of this happening right now. So I try to put that up front because you've kind of given, a problem, a basic solution, and instead of drowning out that solution in, visions of grandeur, let's talk about why this is working right now. And then let's get to visions of grandeur.
Got
it. Yeah. Yes.
How specific should you be with your ask in terms of, or does it depend on your audience?
Depends on the audience, but if you're, let's say you're using this as a proper fundraising deck and you're raising a round, you should list how much you're raising. I stay away from listing the valuation and the valuation cap. Probably unnecessary and serves as a barrier in certain cases. It may turn off certain investors if you put all of that, but you should list the number. Hey, I'm raising $1.2 million seed round, right? So I would get specific in that, and then within that ask, I would also detail how you're splitting up that 1.2 million, right? How much of that is going to hires or product development or marketing, whatever it may be. show the breakdown. Yes.
What would you say is the difference between the solution and the vision? I could imagine there's kind of overlap.
A little bit. Solutions kind of, so you talk about the problem, right? So Uber for cats. There are a bunch of stray cats. They need to get to shelter. I'm making this up on the fly. That's the problem. The solution is, we're going to build Uber for cats. Now anyone, when they see a stray cat, they can call an Uber, place a stray cat in an Uber, and the Uber will take it to a shelter. The vision is, okay, well, now tell me, now that you've described the problem and solution, what do you envision this to be in 5, 10 years out? Is it still just Uber for cats, or is it, hey, we're going to take over the entire transportation angle, right? So thinking about this for Uber solved a very specific problem. Hey, you can order a taxi from your phone. But their vision was, hey, our 10-year horizon is that we want to be the go-to app for mobility. So it doesn't matter if you need a taxi. We want to be there when you need to get micro-mobility solutions, when you need to get from campus, from Anderson to the south side of campus. So great, we have a product for you. It's a scooter, and you can take that. Or hey, you're in class, you're not going to be able to get food.